It was a sunny afternoon at SeaWorld San Diego. The stands were packed. Families were excited. Another Believe show was about to begin, promising thrills and wonder. Few could imagine that the spectacle they were about to witness would quickly turn into a horrifying struggle for survival, a desperate fight against the very creature they came to admire. At the center of it all was Ken Peters, a seasoned orca trainer. For years, he had built a career around these magnificent animals, developing a deep connection with them. He understood their complex social structures, their individual personalities, and the subtle nuances of their behavior. He had known Kasatka for years. He trusted her. He believed in the bond they shared, a bond forged in countless hours of training, performances, and quiet moments of connection. Kasatka, the star of the show, waited in the pool, a behemoth of muscle and intelligence. Captured from the wild as a calf, she had spent her life performing in front of crowds, captivating audiences with her power and grace. But beneath the surface, a different story simmered. A story of confinement, of lost freedom, and of instincts constantly suppressed. A story no one truly understood. The show began like any other. Upbeat music filled the stadium. Ken Peters took his place at the edge of the pool, microphone in hand, ready to guide the audience through another mesmerizing performance. With a signal, Kasatka emerged, her sleek black body glistening in the sun. The crowd erupted in cheers, eager to witness the magic unfold. Ken Peters climbed onto Kasatka's back. The pair glided through the water, a breathtaking ballet of trust and precision. But on this day, something was different. Something was off. A subtle shift in Kasatka's demeanor, a flicker in her eye, a tension that went unnoticed by the audience, and perhaps even by Ken himself. In those initial moments, as Ken Peters waited for the next cue, floating calmly beside Kasatka, the unthinkable happened. Without warning, the orca's powerful jaws clamped down on his left foot. A horrifying crunch echoed through the stadium. The music abruptly stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. The audience gasped in horror as Ken Peters was dragged beneath the surface. The water turned red, blood mixing with the chlorinated depths. Panic erupted. Trainers scrambled into action, desperately trying to regain control of the situation. But Kasatka was unrelenting, her grip unyielding. Below the surface, Ken Peters was plunged into a terrifying struggle. He was no match for the raw power of the orca. Each breath was a gamble, each moment a fight for survival. The crowd watched in horror, unsure if what they were seeing was real. Was it a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? The minutes stretched into an eternity as Kasatka repeatedly dragged Ken Peters beneath the surface, holding him captive in the watery depths. The trainers on the pool deck were helpless. The protocols were clear. No one enters the water. They could only watch in growing horror. They desperately tried to distract Kasatka, slapping the water, whistling, anything to break her focus. But their efforts were futile. Kasatka was locked in a deadly dance, her intentions unclear. Her power absolute. Ken Peters remained calm, knowing that any sign of panic could escalate the situation. He used subtle hand signals to communicate with the trainers on the surface, letting them know he was still alive, still fighting. Each signal was a lifeline, a desperate plea for help. But as the minutes ticked by, hope began to dwindle. How long could he hold his breath? How long could he endure the crushing pressure of the water, the agonizing pain in his foot, the sheer terror of being held captive by a 5,000-pound predator. Then, after nearly 10 agonizing minutes, the unthinkable happened. Kasatka released her grip. Slowly, cautiously, Ken Peters began to swim towards the edge of the pool, his body battered and exhausted. The trainers reached out, pulling him to safety just as he reached the platform, his body a mess of blood and torn wetsuit. He had survived, but the ordeal would leave scars that ran far deeper than the surface, a haunting reminder of the day. The trust between man and orca was shattered in a terrifying underwater attack. The dream was over. The nightmare had just begun. Kasatka's story is complex. She wasn't born into the spotlight, wasn't bred for performance. She was a wild orca, captured off the coast of Iceland in 1978 when she was just a toddler. Imagine being ripped from your family, your ocean home, and thrust into a concrete tank thousands of miles away. That's the reality Kasatka faced. For nearly 3 decades, she lived within the confines of SeaWorld San Diego, learning to perform, to interact with humans, to survive in an environment utterly alien to her natural instincts. To understand the attack on Ken Peters, we have to delve into Kasatka's history, her personality, and the undeniable pressures of captivity. While she was a celebrated performer, lauded for her intelligence and responsiveness, a darker side simmered beneath the surface. Internal SeaWorld documents, later revealed during the OSHA investigation, painted a picture of an orca prone to unpredictable behavior. Instances of aggression towards trainers, refusals to follow commands, and territorial possessiveness were all meticulously recorded. One incident in 1993 saw Kasatka lunge at a female trainer, knocking her into the water, while the trainer wasn't seriously injured. The event served as a stark reminder of the inherent risks involved in working with these powerful animals. Other accounts detail Kasatka becoming agitated when separated from her calf, a common trigger for stress in orcas. This maternal instinct, so deeply ingrained in their nature, was constantly challenged by the artificial environment of captivity. SeaWorld maintained that these incidents were rare and that Kasatka was generally a well-behaved orca. However, former trainers tell a different story. They describe a whale who was always testing boundaries, who demanded respect, and who could turn volatile without warning. One trainer testified during the OSHA hearings that working with Kasatka required heightened awareness, a constant vigilance that could be exhausting and emotionally draining. These accounts raise a crucial question. How much of Kasatka's behavior was due to her inherent personality, and how much was a direct result of the stresses of captivity? Orcas are incredibly intelligent and social creatures. In the wild, they live in complex family groups, hunting together, communicating through intricate vocalizations, and traveling vast distances. Captivity strips them of all of this. They are confined to small tanks, forced to perform repetitive tricks, and deprived of the social interactions that are essential to their well-being. The impact of this confinement can be devastating. Studies have shown that captive orcas suffer from a range of physical and psychological problems, including chronic stress, weakened immune systems, and abnormal behaviors. These behaviors, often referred to as stereotypies, can include repetitive swimming patterns, headbanging, and self-harm. Some experts argue that these stereotypies are a clear indication of mental distress, a sign that the orcas are struggling to cope with their unnatural environment. Furthermore, the constant demands of performing can take a toll on these animals. They are trained to obey commands, to suppress their natural instincts, and to interact with humans in ways that are often unnatural and forced. This can create a sense of frustration and resentment, which can ultimately lead to aggression. In Kasatka's case, it's possible that years of performing, combined with the underlying stresses of captivity and the constant separation from her calf, created a perfect storm of factors that contributed to the attack on Ken Peters. The maternal aspect is particularly important to consider. Orca mothers are fiercely protective of their young. In the wild, they stay with their calves for years, teaching them essential survival skills and providing them with constant support. In captivity, however, this bond is often disrupted. Calves are sometimes separated from their mothers at a young age, either for breeding purposes or to be transferred to other parks. This separation can be incredibly traumatic for both the mother and the calf, leading to heightened stress and behavioral problems. On the day of the attack, Kasatka's calf, Kalia, was nearby, vocalizing in an adjacent pool. This may have triggered a protective instinct in Kasatka, causing her to perceive Ken Peters as a threat to her young Dot. It's impossible to know for sure what was going through Kasatka's mind in those moments. But by understanding her history, her personality, and the pressures of captivity, we can begin to appreciate the complexities of the situation and to recognize that the attack on Ken Peters was not simply an isolated incident, but a symptom of a much larger problem. It was a stark reminder of the ethical implications of keeping these intelligent and powerful animals in captivity, and a call for a more humane and respectful approach to their care. The echoes of Kasatka's attack reverberated far beyond the walls of Shamu Stadium. In its immediate aftermath, SeaWorld scrambled to manage the fallout, both in terms of public perception and legal ramifications. The park temporarily suspended orca shows, launching an internal review of safety protocols. But the incident had already ignited a firestorm of criticism, intensifying the scrutiny that had long simmered beneath the surface of the marine park industry. The most significant consequence was the formal investigation launched by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. This wasn't just a routine inquiry. It was a deep dive into SeaWorld's safety practices, training procedures, and the very philosophy underpinning their interactions with killer whales. OSHA's investigation quickly unearthed a troubling pattern. It wasn't just about a single rogue whale or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was about a systemic underestimation of the inherent risks involved in keeping apex predators in captivity. The investigation revealed that SeaWorld was aware of Kasakas' history of aggression. Internal incident reports documented numerous instances of unpredictable behavior, yet these warning signs were seemingly downplayed, relegated to footnotes rather than acted upon decisively. Trainers, often young and passionate about marine life, were placed in increasingly dangerous situations, encouraged to push boundaries for the sake of performance. The pressure to deliver a captivating show seemingly outweighed the paramount importance of safety. OSHA's findings were damning. In August 2010, they issued citations to SeaWorld for workplace safety violations, specifically citing the recognized hazard of working in close proximity to killer whales. The agency proposed fines and, crucially, mandated that SeaWorld implement stricter safety measures, including physical barriers between trainers and orcas during performances. This marked a seismic shift. The era of free contact between trainers and orcas, a cornerstone of SeaWorld's entertainment model, was coming to an end. SeaWorld fiercely contested OSHA's findings, arguing that the agency lacked expertise in marine mammal behavior and that the proposed restrictions would fundamentally alter their ability to deliver educational and engaging shows. The ensuing legal battle dragged on for years, escalating to the federal appeals court level. But ultimately, OSHA prevailed. The courts upheld the agency's citations and reaffirmed the need for enhanced safety protocols beyond the legal and regulatory realm. The attack on Ken Peters triggered a broader industry shakeup. Other marine parks around the world re-evaluated their safety procedures, investing in improved training programs and physical barriers. The debate over the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity intensified, fueled by animal rights activists and former SeaWorld employees who came forward to share their experiences. Public awareness grew, and attitudes began to shift. What was once seen as harmless entertainment was now increasingly viewed through a lens of ethical concern. The long-term effects on SeaWorld were profound. Attendance declined, revenues dwindled, and the company's reputation suffered a significant blow. The film Blackfish, released in 2013, further amplified the criticism, presenting a powerful and emotionally charged indictment of orca captivity. SeaWorld responded by investing in conservation efforts, expanding its rescue and rehabilitation programs, and phasing out orca theatrical performances, but the damage was done. The attack on Ken Peters, captured on video and replayed countless times, had become a symbol of the inherent risks and ethical dilemmas of keeping these majestic creatures confined to tanks. And what of Ken Peters himself? He returned to SeaWorld after the attack, but his role was forever altered. The physical wounds eventually healed, but the psychological scars remained. He never swam with orcas again, the bond of trust irrevocably broken. While he publicly maintained a professional demeanor, the attack undoubtedly left an indelible mark on his life. The near-death experience, the knowledge that he had been held captive by an animal he had once cared for, the glare of the media spotlight, all of these factors took a toll. Ken Peters' story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the potential consequences of blurring the lines between human and animal. It underscored the importance of respecting the wildness of these creatures, even within the confines of captivity. And it served as a catalyst for a long overdue conversation about the ethical responsibilities of entertainment industries that rely on animal performance. The attack on Ken Peters was more than just a dramatic incident. It was a turning point, a moment that exposed the hidden complexities and inherent dangers of keeping orcas in captivity. It led to significant changes in safety regulations, industry practices, and public perception, and it left Ken Peters with lasting scars, both visible and invisible, serving as a constant reminder of the day when a routine show turned into a terrifying fight for survival beneath the surface.